So, hello everybody. I've been a bit under the weather, so forgive my voice. But it still knows what I want to say. The Columbia County Bail Fund is being launched today. My name is Linda Mussman. I'm the founder and president of the Columbia County Bail Fund. I wanted to thank all of you for coming today. This is a very, 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 very important project to me personally. I want to welcome you all to the reality of this fund, a nonprofit organization licensed by the state of New York to bail people out of jail who are accused of committing misdemeanors with bail that is capped at $2,000. So we cannot bail anyone out for more than that number. I'll be brief and to the point. Many poor people who are accused of misdemeanors simply don't have access to ready cash and end up sitting in jail because they can't make a bail payment of, say, $200, for example. Remember, we are innocent. We are supposed to be innocent until proven guilty, but lacking funds for bail means a person can sit in jail and wait for their day in court, which can take days or weeks. In the meantime, jobs are lost, children are left without a parent, and problems only grow, debts increase. Excuse me. Debts increase, public defendants are overwhelmed, and at times defendants plead guilty to charges just to get out of jail, which results in more problems, more fines, more money, more trips to court, and an on story that is an onward, downward spiral for many who just can't ever get out of this trap. So how did we get here? So I just want to give you a short story. It's a personal one. My experience in New York City working as an artist, as a social worker, and an assistant in the public schools led me to experience the world where injustice was acted out before my eyes. Discrimination by race, sex, class, and economic status was a reality that determined your fate. My apple pie American farm experience was turned upside down by the reality of seeing very real and unjust racist, sexist, and capitalist system shatter the dreams of people who had no support. Both in New York City and Columbia County, this I have seen and continue to see. The first person I ever bailed out was a young man stuck in Rikers Island early in the 1970s. Since coming to Columbia County, I have had a close and intense experience with my community and have been able to help many defendants by coming up with bail or a lawyer, or by going to court to witness and support when they are under extreme pressure. Today, with the help of dedicated people who are sympathetic, who have listened to my pleas, and who have stepped forward, the Columbia County Bail Fund is a reality. So I'm so excited and so delighted. And that leads me to the introduction of our board. I want to introduce Craig Bender, our treasurer, an IBM executive and founder of Kids Need Music. Craig, give us a... Mark Dickerman, our secretary, teaches drama and script writing in New York University and is a board member of the Chatham Synagogue. Cheryl Roberts, attorney, former local judge from Columbia County and executive director of the Greenberger Center for Social and Criminal Justice. Susan Tipograph, a criminal defense attorney for over 40 years who represents indigent people charged in federal and state courts. Each of us has volunteered time and energy to launch this project. We've been going to jail to post bail by accompanying defendants to court, by filing a nonprofit status, by the filing for the nonprofit status, by providing legal assistance, and by being there to witness support people in need. Sometimes that means they need a jacket, or they need a phone, some money for those phone credits so they can call in. And sometimes they need $20 to get a sandwich. Most recently, the Columbia County Bail Fund has been awarded a very generous $10,000 match from Catherine Redlick and Rob Horowitz. We are asking you to help meet this match as soon as we can so we can have $20,000 in our bank. So we're going to switch over now. Cheryl wants to say a few words. Sorry about my voice.
Thank you. I'm sorry Linda's sick today because this is about raising money, but it's also about celebrating all the work that Linda has done for so many years. It did occur to me, though, as I drove down here, that her being sick actually gives me an opportunity to talk about her without having much strength to really tell her to shut up. So I'm going to do that because, you know, as in so many other situations, Linda was ahead of her time. She saw the writing on the wall. Just look outside on this wall on the side of this room. You see the writing on the wall. It's really part of who she is. And she understood the need for criminal justice reform years ago. She knew at the time mass incarceration, and for the rest of us did. Before we heard the terms, hands up, don't shoot. Before we heard the term, Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter to Linda Mussman. As she said, she would go down and bail people out. You all didn't know about it. It wasn't about getting thank you or getting anything in return. It wasn't about politics. When she was doing this, she wasn't even thinking about running. And by the way, she just won fourth ward supervisor. But for her, it was really, and I think I know Linda pretty well by now, it just really pissed her off that people were incarcerated. It wasn't fair, it wasn't right, it wasn't just, that they were sitting in jail, innocent until proven guilty, but sitting there nonetheless because they couldn't afford to bail people out. She also saw, as she mentioned firsthand, what happens. People lose their jobs, their kids. And longer term, they come out with a criminal record, even if they didn't ever do the thing they were charged with. And when you come out with a criminal record, we find that incarceration breeds incarceration because you can't get a job if you have a criminal record. And so as she saw this snowball of mass incarceration getting bigger and bigger, that started at least the most recent iteration with Nixon in the 60s, encompassing and engulfing more people to the point where we have 2.3 million people incarcerated right now. We have 6 million people who are disenfranchised, can't vote. 6 million people can't vote in this country because of felony conviction. And right now, about 740,000 people are in jail tonight, most of them on low-level crimes, most of them poor, most of them of color, and they can't afford to bail out. So as she saw this snowball coming down over the decades, she called in the troops. And now you're all part of the troops because you're all here. And we decided to form the Columbia County Bail Fund because it gave us a way to bail out more people, to do it legally, efficiently, and it gave us a vehicle that we could have a 501c3 nonprofit so that we could collect money and you could get a deduction for it. So it really works out well that way. So if you have given to the match, thank you so very much. If you can give more, thank you so much more. If you haven't given, and I haven't inspired you to do so, or Linda hasn't, I can guarantee you that our next speaker, Michael, will give you a really good reason. So thank you so much for coming. We so appreciate it. And I'm going to turn it back over to Linda.
Okay, I want to bring Craig up who's the treasurer, has also been helping out with the bails, going directly to the jail. One of the people that we have helped is here today, and we want to have Craig introduce him, and Michael will talk a little bit about his experience. Go ahead, Craig.
Thanks, Linda, and again, thank you from my heart for all of you coming out today. I had the honor of meeting Michael West, who was our guest today. Michael had an altercation, if you would, with the police where he didn't pull over right away when the police asked him to, and panicked a bit, so maybe that wasn't the right thing to do. But because of that, he got charged with something, and he was asked to do certain things like call in each day as part of the agreement. Well, he didn't have a phone, right? It took him a week to get a phone, and it took him some time to get some money to pay for that phone. Some of the things that Linda talked about. Well, what happens when you're ordered by the judge to call in each day and you don't do it? Doesn't matter what the reason is. Warrant for your arrest, and sure enough, that went out, and Michael got sent to jail. Now, fortunately, we, through the public defender and Linda, I heard about this, and fortunately, Michael only had to spend a few hours in jail, versus, I would say, the 2 to 3 months that he would have spent in jail waiting for trial, right? So, anyway, I have found Michael to be very engaging, very intelligent. He has a job. He's living with somebody and helping to care for his children. I would view as a very productive member of society, and have been very honored to meet him. I'd like to introduce Michael West to tell us a little about his story. Michael?
Hello. So, my name is Michael, as you've been told. I'm not a crazy person that gets in trouble all the time. I don't really do a lot. Okay, I'm pretty quiet. But everybody makes mistakes. And on July 4th, I made a pretty heavy mistake. As Craig said, I was signaled that I needed to pull over, but I had been going through a pretty significant crisis, a domestic dispute, an argument. And I panicked when I saw the flashing lights. I panicked and I just took off and I ran. So, in light of this situation, I was in jail for a brief period of time, and I was released with the special orders, which I was not able to immediately follow. I was made aware that there was a warrant for my arrest, and I turned myself in. After turning myself in, when I came before the judge the second time, I requested that they release me again. I tried to explain my situation, explain that I had just started working and that I had several things in my life that I needed to be out in society in order to deal with or address. That if I wasn't able to address them, then my likelihood of being able to go from being an indigent person to a productive member of society was almost non-existent. The judge didn't care and still put me in jail. It was at this point that my lawyer, Michael Howard, mentioned that he would try to find someone to bail me out. And at this point that Craig Bender and this Columbia County Bail Fund through Linda, these people, heard my story and they bailed me out. They gave me an opportunity and a chance. Now, if it wasn't for the chance given to me, there's no way to say exactly how long I would have been sitting in county jail. And during that time, I would have lost my job. I would not have been able to make my hearing for my disability in relation to my actual emotional and mental issues. And many things in my life wouldn't be how they are now. As it stands, I'm still working part-time. I was able to make my hearing. I am a productive member of society. I'm working with my family. I've paid off my fines. I was able to deal with this crisis, this mistake that I made, and make good and make steps to actually advance my future. without this help, I would have had no opportunity, and things could only have gotten worse around me. So I ask you guys to take that into consideration. This fund is very important for the poor people that have no one. I don't have family, I don't have a long list of friends. I only have what little that I am building at this point. And if it weren't for this organization, I can't say that I would be sitting as well as I am today.
So I want to thank Michael. That his experience tells you just about everything we need to say about the bail fund and why it's so, so important. I just want to stress that this $10,000 opportunity is really rare. I've run TSL for 40 some years and haven't had this chance. So I'm slightly jealous. TSL has been extremely lucky. We have such a great audience, and this is really, truly an act of joy to get something started and off the ground, because it is absolutely so necessary, so important. Working on it for so long, and it just has to happen. The sooner the better, because people are sitting there right now in jail today. This isn't just Hudson or Greenport, it's every court in Columbia County that we can serve. You have to think about that. Every court we can help. Austerlitz, Ghent, you name them. They're all out there, and they have people that perhaps need our help. So just want to remind you the match. Please tell people about it. We're going to continue the fundraiser after today. We also would like to have volunteers help us as we move this project forward, and we want to make sure we get your email, your information. Before I wrap it up and close, would like to have, if you have questions, Susan Typograph perhaps can give us some insight into some of the follow-up and how it'll happen. So if you have any questions, shout out. Or Susan, you want to say a few things? Jump over here.
Hi, everybody. I practiced law, I said, for over 40 years, and I'd just like to tell you two experiences I had which were particularly moving to me. I once, many, many years ago, represented somebody in misdemeanor court who was a very large black man with a long criminal record, and he was accused of committing a very minor crime, and the judge set $250 bail on him, and that's a bail that for most of us, even those of us who don't really have a lot of money and may not have a lot of cash in our pocket, we all have somebody who could go to the ATM or make a call to somebody and to get bailed out. And the judge said $250 bail, and the man started to cry because he knew that he didn't have the money and would have no way to raise that money. And he ended up spending some months in jail before his case could get resolved. And the other one, which was, I probably shouldn't admit this because this was a violation of ethics on my part. I had a client once, a young kid, 19 years old, who was charged with a felony, so it wouldn't come within our purview, but his bail was $5,000, and he was charged with like grand larceny, and like so many cases, he was essentially given the opportunity to fight his case and stay in jail or plead guilty and get out of jail. And I posted his bail because I didn't want him to plead guilty. 19 years old, he was going to plead guilty to a felony, and that was the only way that he could get out of jail. I'm not supposed to do that. That's why there is things like the Columbia County Bail Fund to do that. It makes an enormous difference. If you're out of jail, it's more than likely that you're going to get a resolution in your case that's not going to involve you going to jail. So it makes a difference in every state of the proceedings. And I can't even begin to tell you how many people plead guilty because they want to get out of jail. So we're happy to answer your questions, happy to take your money, happy that you could pass along our work to other people who are not here tonight, whether they live in Columbia County or someplace else, who can contribute to the work that we're doing. So,
Could you explain the mechanics of it?
well, in the last few years, in the course of kind of the issues of criminal justice reform, there has become, the New York State Legislature passed a law which allowed the formation of community bail funds like here. First one was started in the Bronx called the Bronx Freedom Fund. There's one in the Brooklyn called the Brooklyn Community Bail Fund. I understand there's one which may be starting in Greene County that allows a community group to get together to get 501c status, to take tax-deductible contributions, to be taking the test and do what they have to do in order to become bail bondsmen. Cheryl's in the process, has passed the test. Craig has passed the test, and they are going to be bail bondspeople. The law allows these community bail funds to post bail for misdemeanors only up to $2,000. And what that says to us and to the people who do this, this is poor people's bail. This is a bail that forces poor people to stay in jail. So you can assume it's misdemeanors, so it's offenses that are not that serious under the law, and it's for amounts of money which under the kind of the purview of the criminal justice system is not a lot, although for some people $10, they couldn't get out if their bail was $10. So I don't know if that addresses your question.
The further question was, someone has just been told by a judge his bail is $250. What happens?
Well, we have tried to develop relationships and have with the Columbia County Public Defender's Office and lawyers throughout Columbia County, and publicity about this will have lawyers be able to contact us to say, I have a client in the New Lebanon court or Hudson or Greenport whose bail just was set for $200 or for $500. Can the bail fund bail them out? And we will jump into action and to try to bail them out as quickly as possible.
I wondered if you could clarify for someone who doesn't know all about it, the statement in here, of those who remain in jail pre-trial, just 38% have their cases resolved without a conviction, as compared to 88% of those who make bail. I don't quite understand that.
What I was saying, and I'm not a numbers person, so forgive me, what happens if somebody is sitting in jail, like this young kid I had who had a $500 bail? The amount of people who plead guilty in order to get out of jail is incredibly high. So that what happens is people plead guilty before the prosecution is forced to prove they're guilty on a reasonable doubt, before their lawyer can perhaps resolve their case in a way that gets them into a drug program or some kind of program that keeps them out of jail and may even keep them from getting any kind of criminal record. So the pressure to get out because of family obligations, because they have a Medicaid hearing, in a month, where if they don't go to the hearing, they're going to lose their Medicaid. We'll have to start the process all over again. They'll lose their kids. They'll lose their jobs. They'll lose their housing. Puts enormous pressure on people to admit to things without the kind of the due process of the law, and without the opportunity to resolve the cases in a way that's not going to get them a criminal record.
It's just really scary to be in jail. It's dehumanizing. You have no privacy. You get beat up and work. So you will plead guilty just to be safe. Even if you didn't do it, even if it's on a personal one. Yes. So thank you. Yes.
Susan, I think it should also be pointed out that the purpose of bail is that the defendant returned to court.
Correct.
And the experience of all of the charitable bail funds in New York, as well as, you didn't mention that in 1985 there was a Madison County bail fund formed. That bail fund operated before the statute limited it to $2,000 with bail up to $5,000. They had only one person not return to court in their entire experience, and that person, they persuaded the judge, would return to court in 2 weeks, and he did. They didn't have anyone who skipped bail. This is purely the criminalization of poverty.
Absolutely.
Susan, I know that when, at the very beginning, when this was a smaller fund, there was an additional element, not just bailing out the person, but also giving them some other kind of support, advice, help. Does the bail fund expect to continue doing that? Having some personal connection to the people that they post bail for?
Well, I think we're in the process of trying to work that out. We're new at this. So, for instance, the Brooklyn Community Bail Fund and the Bronx Freedom Fund have staffs that involve social workers and counselors, etc. At this point, it's just the 5 of us. So I think we're going to have to figure out how do we want to supervise, and I say that not in a way of, being oppressive, but how do we support the people who get out? We're not going to be their lawyers, we're not social workers, but how can we support them? And for some of the people, like Craig talked about, getting somebody a phone or checking in with them and making sure they have clothes to go to court. And I think as we get underway, I think we'll figure out better how to do that. It would be wonderful if we could hire somebody part-time to help do the supervision, or to get I think there was an offer of perhaps maybe board students to volunteer to do that. And we're trying to figure all that out and to do it in a way that's productive and that it helps advance the kind of work that we want to do.
Can I just say just one thing? I'm also very committed to getting people who are formerly incarcerated to be part of that very effort, because I think people closest to the problem are closest to the solution, as a colleague often says, Glenn Martin. Yeah, I encourage people who are formerly incarcerated to work with us.
Michael wants to say something.
I just wanted to add, in answer to that question, that prior to my going to court, and also as well as after going to court, I received continued support from Craig. He would call me occasionally, he would check in, ask how I'm doing. It was nothing oppressive, and even after the point when my case was done and finished and the money had been returned because I went to court, I still received continued calls every so often, how you doing, what's going on, I feel there is support offered afterwards, and it may be early on, but they definitely are trying very hard.
I've known Susan for a very long time. We're both criminal defense attorneys, and to some extent, I think we probably all agree that we're preaching to the converted here. It's a wonderful thing. And so I'd like to invite you all to step up the effort to the next step, and that is to recognize that these small amounts of bail, less than $2,000, is a poverty bail. It's only designed to keep poor people in jail. And it's designed by the people who impose this bail. And those are judges that you elect. So that when you go to the ballot box, you have the opportunity to vote for judges who won't penalize people for being poor. You can demand that of your judges because they're there to represent you. And I really want to suggest that at the next election, when those nice judges come around to your clubs and talk to you about how fair they'll be and just, demand of them that they commit to not penalize people for being poor.
If a Columbia County resident is accused of a misdemeanor in a county other than Columbia in New York State, will they be welcome to access this bail fund?
My understanding is they have to, our charter or whatever requires us only for people who are arrested in Columbia County.
Thank you.
So, but soon we'll have one in Greene County, and people should encourage people. We all of us here are obviously progressive and minded people, and we've all talked and had conversations about mass incarceration and criminal justice reform. This is what we can do. It's obviously not all that we can do, but this is a very real thing about changing the culture and the nature of how courts work in this county and in other places. So,
This Ulster County is starting theirs as well, so they're in the process now.
you can get arrested anywhere in Hudson Valley. Somebody will get you out.
Mr. Rock.
Yeah,
John.
if this works well too, it provides evidence and could provide enhanced political pressure, on judges and district attorneys to stop the criminalization of poverty. It's so goddamn evil. And it violates the constitutional principle of equality before the law and no punishment without conviction. So it's very coarse stuff, politically, constitutionally, socially, in every way.
We all agree with that?
Would you list the most common misdemeanor offenses that tend to have bail under $2,500?
Well, I think as a general rule, most misdemeanor offenses, the bail is going to be under $2,500. I think the exceptions are probably people who would have long criminal records or have a history of not coming back to court. They're more likely to have bail set at a higher. But the things that people get arrested for are, possession of marijuana and driving while intoxicated and domestic incidences and petty larceny, those kinds of things. In New York City, where I primarily practice, over the course of 6 years, in the last 10 years, 15% of the arrests in the city of New York were for possessions of small amounts of marijuana. That gives you some idea about it.
I just actually looked up the statistics in Columbia County. The majority of the misdemeanors were for larceny, and larceny is just theft. It's not a violent crime. It's someone's taking something that doesn't belong to them. It's not burglary. It's not where you're breaking into someone's house. It's just simply a property crime. Not simply, but it's not
Stealing a 6-pack of beer from a convenience store.
so.
Mike, you want to say something?
Since we started this, and since we started bailing people out, there has been some sort of reaction, and some of the courts are like, they say to me, well, Mike, are you going to get the person bailed out? So I said, well, I'm going to try. And so because of that, some of the judges are starting to reevaluate it and maybe not setting bail as much as they used to. So I hope that this is becoming obsolete as soon as we start. But having someone I can call that say, I need some money. Susan said she, has bailed out people. I bailed out 2 people 2 weeks ago because I got stuck. But I have no choice. I'm not going to send a 19-year-old kid to jail.
For people, this is Michael Howard, who's a public defender here in Columbia County.
I have a question about how much money is really needed. So you have a matching fund of 10,000. But how much is needed to really, for how many bonds you have to pay throughout a year? Is there any work done to see how much is needed?
They're all over the place, the bonds. So we can only go up to 2,000, the bail amount. So it's kind of hard to tell. I can tell you that we're not going to be bailing out people, 10 people at once, because we need to start slow. It's important that we do this well, that we have the follow-up that Michael's talking about. That's why, if you're interested in working with us to do the kinds of follow-up that's needed, we need your help to do that. But it would be great to hire someone part-time to keep track of bail amounts and what's coming in, what's going out. We all have full-time jobs. So, and we're happy to do this, but it would be great to have someone, so some of the money could go for that person too.
The lady in front.
So you will be, in other words, you're gonna be relying on the lawyers who are gonna call you and ask for bail for their clients. That's how you,
It's going to be primarily the public defender's
Public
office, because
defender's
the people who have retained lawyers
okay.
presumably would have the money to post bail, so I think primarily it's going to be from the public defender's office.
Okay.
People like Michael and his colleagues.
When the person returns to court, is the money refunded reasonably promptly, or do you have to wait a year?
Basically, the money lays there until it's finished, until the person is done, either they've seen the judge or they have had a result from the case. So a lot of times our money is tied up for 6 months to 8 months. You don't get it right away, and then they take 3%. So you're losing a little bit of the fund.
They're only allowed to take 3% if there's a conviction of some kind. If there's whatever, they're not supposed to take administrative costs.
Well, that's not been happening.
Okay, well, we'll get on that.
So your money is tied up, so it's not like you get it right back immediately. Even when they appear in court, you're not going to get your check right away returned. You have to wait until the case is finished. So there is a lag time, which is why you need a certain amount of money. I'm not sure if we answered your question, what we need, because I think the need and the success of the program, the more successful it is, obviously we're going to need more funds. It's because we're going to be able to bail more people out and keep it rolling, but that requires a lot of additional work. Yes?
I just wanted to add that remind me the power of a bail fund is the sort of wraparound services that can be provided. I mean, obviously a bail fund doesn't stay viable unless a person comes back to court, which is the point of it. But in that process of getting someone to come back to court, so much can be discovered about what their circumstances are and what their issues are. So in terms of what does a bail fund need, and we've talked, Linda, that it could need a lot other than what is the bail amount.
Absolutely, and I think the reality is to work through this carefully and slowly, but the fact is, if it's a success, it will need a lot, because Michael West, Quentin Cross, who has certainly been part of my experience in this community, there's a lot of things that people need support, having to bring their lives back into a project which is where they can get work, become engaged, and rebuild themselves so that they can get their lives together. It doesn't happen in a minute. I mean, lots of people don't have support, and that to me is the key. It's how I've survived in my life. You know, there were people that could always help me, that I could always call, and that isn't the case. And as time has gone on, it's gotten worse and worse. And if you didn't read the news last Friday, it's not going to get any better. So we had enough chat. We can go on and on and on, yes.
Now that the fund is a 501c3, are there other sources of income, public or private, that the fund could apply for?
Fund could, yes. But there's 5 of us. So you can write grants, you can do all kinds of things. But right now, I mean, it's very important in my point of view that the community participate, because you're the people that are going to make the difference. This isn't from some fantastic planet that the money comes from. This is the people that live here who are getting the information. Well, I didn't know this was going on in the Columbia County Jail. I didn't know this was happening right here in Columbia County. We need to explain to everybody what goes on right here. And people just don't know it unless you have some relationship with someone. Now, how are you going to know that unless somebody helps you meet the people that are having this experience? And they are so removed from our lives that you can't reach them, so we need to be the first. Then there'll be more and more and more. And my experience is the outsider is not going to solve our problems. We are going to fix them.
Linda, I just wanted to say that when we had times when various people from the community came to court to support one person or a group of people, that makes it harder for the judge to look at all of them and set bail.
Right.
They may be displeased with what one person allegedly did, but if you have a group of people there, and when Craig comes to court, and Quentin's nodding at me because it's helped in many, many times, when we have a group of people that come to support a young person or anybody in town, it makes a difference. So,
Glenn, you would say something? Yeah.
Yes, I know, we have, a couple years ago, SBK Social Justice Center started a community justice advocate program, and people show up to court on behalf of residents in the community, and we see the change very readily. First of all, the judge asks who you're here for. Then the people get up first, and then, you know, they get, you know, whether they have to go to jail or not, they get their due process that many people, in my opinion, haven't been in and out of the court system, haven't gotten. So people just showing up, as Dan said, as the electorate, you know, in a small place like, all these towns are small, right? So in a space like Hudson, if you're showing up and this judge is elected, and he, you know, where the voters, they look and they listen, and they want, I can't speak for out in the county, but I know in Hudson, the judge is looking for change, looking for something, looking for options to be able to be supported, but he needs to be supported by the community because it's the people v. this person, you know, there's opposition from other areas, you know, could be the district attorney, could be, you know, the victims' families or things of that nature. They want to do the right thing, but they need that support from the community. So, if you guys are willing and able, please join this movement. I'm personally like the Bell Fund to me, like it's a game changer in this type of county. I've seen, you know, what occurs at Columbia County Jail. And let's take away any of the violence or anything. There's nothing going on. You're stagnant. There's no, you know, there's no education. There's no building. There's some programs, but it's just stuck. So I might have been there 6 times. I don't see very many new faces, right, Mike? You see, you know, it's the same folks.
you know, it's the same people, it's the same family. I'm on 3rd generation now, and they never catch a break.
Yeah, that's it. Just really, what else can I say? Right behind you.
Okay. I live in Hudson, and earlier this year I was part of that group that was talking about the Community Justice Advocates Program. As a volunteer, my name was on an email list, and I get an email to appear in police court that morning to support one of the young people that we were there to support. Right. And as Clinton said, there was a profound change in the demeanor and attitude of the judge. I often got the impression that they were very careful, were they following all the rules precisely, so that someone that was there, and they didn't know who the group of people were, might be noting, were they giving the correct consideration. But overall, there was, you know, nothing to complain about in that sense, but I think it was a tremendous change, and I think it was supportive to the person and their family that was there with them. But more than that, by participating, I found out so much about this system that I simply didn't understand. And so I understand what you're talking about, because of just being in contact with a few people that are going through that experience and feeling it today. So Linda, I hope you can set up some kind of, or have your volunteers set up an email list like that.
We will do that.
So if it's in the Hudson Police Court or Columbia County Court and you live here, and many of us are retired and available at 8:30 in the morning, we can be there to support those.
We're going to use it. We will definitely. One more question, and we're going to have a little time. Freedom time.
Well, in Green County, we're undergoing this discussion about a new jail.
Yeah, forget it.
Forget it, right? and $57 million bond issue, now it's down to $44 million bond issue. But as a result of that, a couple of our legislators one very progressive, one just doesn't want to see taxes raised, figures he won't get reelected, I would think, formed an Alternatives to Incarceration Committee. And they did very impressive work and presented it to this public and to the legislature. And among the stories that was told is that this committee has law enforcement, the district attorney's office, the public defender's office, you know, think tanks, citizens. And at one meeting, someone representing law enforcement says, what you don't understand is that these are the worst of the worst. And my friend Crane said, you mean it's $200 that protects me from the worst of the worst? He said, it can't be very terrible. It's $200 that protects me as a citizen. Right, well done, right? I didn't say it, I don't remember. But
So we want to thank you all for coming. We want to invite you in the other room. We have little refreshments for you.
hi.
Freedom pie. Craig wants to make one comment.
There's a list going around for you to sign, your name, contact information. Most of you have gotten it, but not everybody. So before you run out, please grab a clipboard or leave your contact information to someone with that.
Just taking checks.
No, we won't. Thanks, everybody.